Back to another episode of the Casey Campbell podcast. Casey Campbell with you, of course. Pleased to be joined by Josh Sims of Fox Sports. How's it going?
I'm doing good, Casey. How you doing, man?
Doing well. This has been a long time in the works, so thank you so much for coming on. Just how I mean, I know you've been in the Charlotte area for quite a bit of time, but this is, I think, your third year with the NASCAR on Fox. So what's that been like?
Yeah, man, it's been good. I joined on with Fox Sports in 2021, so I kind of did the second half of that season, and then I went full time last year. So this is technically the second full season, even though I did some races in 21. But man, it's been a blast. Obviously been covering the sports since 2015 when I was still in local, but to cover it this in depth and on this side of things is really cool just to see the inner workings and to get to know everybody involved in the sport and get to know the drivers and teams way more in depth than I did before. And to be there week in and week out gives you a whole new appreciation for everything that goes into putting this thing together from obviously the racing side of things, but everything behind the scenes. And it's been a blast. I got no complaints.
Yeah. So, going in and you got to do something that you got to be on pit road for the Daytona 500. That had to be, what was that like when they told you were going to be doing that?
Yeah, man. When I got the call at first, I was just in shock. I was kind of like, really? And at the same time, I was also excited for the opportunity because it's the Daytona 500, man. It's the biggest race the sport has. So while I had that excitement, it was short-lived because I was like, all right, man, it's go time, like this is the top of the series. You got to make sure you got your stuff ready and you're ready to go. And Daytona week in itself is a beast just because of all the moving parts. But added to the fact that I'm, now doing the Xfinity race and the Cup race that weekend. And, there's stuff on track every single day. So you're juggling a lot, but there were so many great storylines going into the year that it really made it a lot of fun to be a part of it this time instead of just watching it, and being there, but being from afar doing the other series. Now I was in the thick of it and, doing everything leading up to it from qualifying to the duels and then leading up to the 500. It was just kind of surreal to be a part of that after seeing it so many years. To be in it was truly special.
Yeah. So, hey, you're going to I know you're just recovering, getting back from Martinsville, but we got Talladega, you got Dover coming up. You're going to a lot of places that I'm pretty sure you've been to, but you're still checking off some boxes. You correct me if I'm wrong. You've probably been to Dover, right?
I have not been to Dover, so no, this will be my first time going to Dover. Doing last year I was full-time truck, so most of the time I did the full truck schedule, and that was about 22 races. But a lot of the weekends I would miss that the Cup drivers would go to. Like when they went to New Hampshire or, when they went to Fontana or some of the others, I didn't get to go. And Dover was one of those that I didn't get to go to. So I'm seeing a lot of the tracks this year for the first time, which is, really cool, so I'll get a chance to see what I've always seen on TV. And going into it, I won't know what to expect until I'm kind of in it. But, I'm excited for that.
You always, and what you've always been able to do is you got to bring the storytelling element to the broadcast. It's what you're used to when you worked in local TV when you were in Charlotte, um, and obviously previous stops before that. But overall, what's that been like this year? Because I've seen a lot. I mean, the feature pieces this year have always been there. Obviously, I think the one I remember the most was the one you did with Eckes.
Yeah, that one was awesome because I had just gotten a dog.
Yeah.
So my dog got to be on TV. I say, it took me basically 20 something years to get on TV. My dog got on TV within being alive for like 7 months. So he beat me to it. But yeah, that was really cool because, the whole goal of the stories we do is to get to know the drivers and get to know them outside of the race car. And obviously, those pieces are centered around what they do each and every weekend on the track, but you also want to get to know them as humans. And, like that's why people latch on to certain drivers. That's why people root for drivers, is because of who they are and, what they do in their spare time, and the things they care about will draw people in. So that's why it's fun to do those sort of things for me, is to get to know those guys. And, I'd been covering Eckes for a couple of years, and you kind of knew his story. But to see him grinding away and getting this opportunity with a new team and still trying to prove himself, and to later see him, get a win and, kind of silence, some of the doubters and some of the haters, I think is cool. And, a lot of these stories allow me to see these guys in vulnerable states, see them in a different light, get to know them, so that when I get to the track, it only, adds to the stories I can tell and the background on these guys and the stuff I could quickly add in when I'm doing, a quick report in race, or doing a hit pre-race or after the race or something like that.
So obviously this weekend is, you're going to Talladega. What's that going to be like? And obviously you've been there, but
Yeah.
what's it like to go down to Talladega?
Yeah, man. Talladega is, a whole beast in itself. And, I love going to the super speedways. I love the races in general. Just the going into it knowing basically, anybody kind of has a shot, even though there are guys, that are going to usually perform well at a super speedway. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's just the weekend feels different, whether you're going to Daytona or Talladega and that type of super speedway racing on a massive track. And there's a different kind of energy to it. There's a different kind of chaos to it. And you just have to be on top of everything in race, because so many things are happening at once. So many different drivers can come into play and be a factor. And all of a sudden, a guy that was down on your board is all of a sudden leading, and one of your leading guys is out of the race because he got caught up in the big one. And, that's the type of stuff that keeps you on your toes. That's the type of stuff as a pit reporter that tests how much pre-race info and research you do, and how well you're able to tell the stories of a guy that was not going to be a storyline going in, and all of a sudden is, and someone that was and drops out, like all that stuff comes into play at these type of racetracks. You got to be ready for everything and anything. And it's pretty fun though.
Yeah. So what's it like coming from being on pit road to hosting a studio show?
Yeah, it's interesting because, I always tell people the transition from local TV to in local reporting in general to pit reporting is so different than anything I had done before. Whereas transitioning from hosting a show on local TV to hosting Race Hub is, pretty similar. Obviously there's differences to hosting a general sportscast versus hosting a show that's strictly NASCAR related. But, like that transition for me at least was a lot smoother and a lot easier, because it is something closer to what I've been doing before. The coolest part about it is just, the rotating guests and analysts we get in studio. I mean, we get drivers that are currently, competing, which I think is so cool, from your Almirolas to your Keselowskis to Blaney to Suarez, who are all guests. And then you get crew chiefs like Drew Blick coming in. You get Chad Canals coming in. You get Hall of Famers, Bobby Labonte. You have America's crew chief, Larry McReynolds. I mean, the list goes on people that you could have on the show to pick their brain and ask them questions. And, my job is really pretty simple. My job is to play quarterback and make sure that I'm distributing the ball, so on to speak, to the different analysts, and letting them cook in a way, and asking intelligent questions, asking important questions, asking the questions that the viewers have, in hopes that these guys can be able to bring to light the biggest stories, the biggest issues, their concerns, and all that type of stuff. So it's those are a lot of fun. It's funny because it feels like, I typically will host on Wednesdays, and for the last month, every Wednesday has been breaking news Wednesday, with whether
Yeah.
it's the appeals or the suspensions or just different stories. Last week, it was the announcement for Chase Elliott. So Wednesday, man, is always a blast, because we'll have a plan going into it, and about a half hour going out from the show, which is live at 6. We'll completely have to tear apart the rundown because something will break, and we'll be like, all right, well, scrap what we were talking about. Like, the show is all about this. And then it tests your ability to just, go on the fly. And so much of this business is being able to ad lib and adapt to different situations. So, that's always the most fun shows when, it feels like chaos because you're like, all right, well, I don't know what we're about to do next. But, the producers are so great. They tell you, all right, we're going to talk about this next. We're going to pivot to this next. And then it tests your ability to then be able to steer the show in the right direction and continue to stay on top of topics. And, that makes it a blast.
What are we gonna, going into, from that, we're going into the, of course, I mentioned this weekend, we're all heading to Talladega. What are we gonna expect from this big weekend? Because we got three races, ARCA, Xfinity, and Cup, and they're all gonna be on the Fox family of networks. So what are we gonna expect from all three? Because I know you're gonna be on pit road for Xfinity.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be fun. I think, the interesting thing about it is Talladega is one of those places where you need friends. You need help in the draft. You need help getting those pushes. You're going to be driving so close to one another that also those enemies that you have made, might have a chance to leave you out to dry to get their payback and stuff like that. So I think it'll be interesting, at least, speaking from the cup side of things, to watch how things like that play out and whether or not, you know, how teammates help each other, how teammates maybe screw each other over, how enemies screw each other over, just to see all that stuff come into play at Talladega, I think is going to be really cool, really interesting. We continue to see if, Hendrick's going to have the continued dominance they've had. Is Toyota going to get on the ball? Obviously, Penske is usually good at super speedways, and, Ross Chastain obviously won at Talladega last year. So, will he be able to repeat? There's so many cool storylines heading into the cup race alone. And then, from the Xfinity side of things, just, junior motorsports hasn't won yet. Like last year they were dominating, and it's crazy to think we're this far into the season. I think it's 8 races and they haven't yet entered victory lane. And, they've been strong, but, they haven't tasted victory. When will that happen? Will it be this weekend? And, I just think it's interesting watching. We talked about going into the season, the guys that were moving up, and you lose Noah, you lose Ty, you lose AJ. Where are those wins going to come from? Well, Austin Hill grabs 3 of them. John Hunter Nemechek, who just moved back up to Xfinity, now has 2 of them. Chandler Smith, who moved up, has 1 of them. Sammy Smith, who moved up, has 1 of them. You're seeing the new guys come in and kind of take charge. What about the guys that have been there, the Allgaiers, the Sam Mayers? Like, when are we going to see them, Josh Berry, get back on the ball and kind of take sight and take hold of the series? And then, just seeing the young guys in ARCA and how they develop. I mean, seeing Sawalich do what he did in the truck series last week was, to get a top 10 in your first time in a truck, and you're learning all this stuff. And by the way, you throw all this weather at him and everything like that, and to see him perform like that, that's incredible. You're seeing the future stars, and to see them at that level, is cool. And to see how they handle those super speedways and to see all that stuff, I think is exciting for sure.
Yeah, of course, Taylor Gray will be in the 18 this week for Joe Gibbs Racing, so that'll be fun to see. I think we'll see Sawalich again in I think next week time when ARCA East goes to Dover, so that'll be fun. All right, well, Josh Sims, thanks for coming on and talking with us, and best of luck this weekend in Race Hub Land. We'll see you in Talladega.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, and I'll see you soon.